What's up, TopFam? Today we'll be giving you 10 tips for sticking to your travel budget. Let's go. The research has been done, flights are booked, and before you know it you're sipping cocktails on a beach in Thailand with no end date in sight. You're finally living the dream. But the hard part is far from over. Now that you've taken that incredible step towards a life of long-term travel, you need to learn how to stretch your money out as far as possible. Certain parts of the world like Southeast Asia and Latin America are famous for being cheap, but that doesn't mean it is impossible to spend all your money in only a few weeks. That's where you need to learn how to stick to your travel budget. Tip number 10: keep track of every dollar spent. Every single dollar we spend we write down in a little pocket diary. Every single dollar. At the end of the week we add up how much we have spent and use it to keep track of where our money goes. Doing this helps to keep us focused on our goals and see where we need to improve on ways to stick to our travel budget. Having the numbers in front of you makes it seem real and really gives direction in your spending habits. Tip number 9: make a daily travel budget. Yes, the biggest tip for sticking to your travel budget is to actually have a budget to start with. Work out how long you plan to be away for and make up a budget. Then stick to it. Our travel budget here in Southeast Asia is $25 a day each. Some days we go over it, but we always make up for this by having a few quiet days to even it out. If you stop caring, then you may run out of money a lot sooner than you wanted to. Tip number 8: cut back on the alcohol. Don't get us wrong, we love a drink or two. But alcohol will cut deep into your travel budget. For an example, the average cost of a beer in Southeast Asia is about $1.50, give or take. If we have 5 beers each, every night of the year when we are traveling, that works out to be $5,460 annually. That's nearly 30% of our yearly travel budget. We do love a night out every now and then, but through lots of experience, we have learned that travel is much more fun without a hangover. Tip number 7: travel slowly. Slow travel has a lot of benefits, but the one we are focusing on now is that it saves you a lot of money. Staying in one place for an extended period of time allows you to work out where the cheapest places are to eat and drink. Depending on your bartering skills, you can make a deal with your accommodation and get a better price for a week-long stay. You are no longer taking transport every other day, which can really cut into a traveler's budget. There will be the chance to take a few rest days, where you don't go to museums or check out awesome tours. This means you can relax by the beach or go for a walk, enjoying the downtime by doing some free activities. Trust us, the slower you travel, the less you spend. Tip number 6: catch public transport. If the locals do it, why shouldn't you? This can be one of the biggest fears for first-time travelers to developing countries, but 99% of the time the local bus or train is great. Not only are they really cheap compared to taxis or tourist buses, but they can be very entertaining. Nothing quite like sharing your seat with a local family of 4, their luggage and a goat to give you a fun travel story. Sure, it might be a bit less comfortable than taking a private car, but remember, you have a travel budget to stick to. Embrace the public transport, or if you are really adventurous, try hitchhiking. Tip number 6: eat where the locals eat. Whether it is street food, a hole-in-the-wall eatery, or a sit-down restaurant, the locals usually know where the best and cheapest food is. If a place has a crowd, you can almost guarantee it will be good. Western-style meals in third-world countries are usually expensive and very rarely as tasty as what you can get at home. Don't avoid the local food just because you think you may get sick. Both fancy restaurants and street vendors all buy their food from the same markets. If the locals are eating there, it is probably safe. Tip number 5: stay in cheap accommodation. Accommodation is usually the biggest day-to-day cost of any traveler's expenses. In many countries, dropping a few $100s a night on a nice hotel room is very easy to do. But this is counterproductive to your long-term travel goals. If you are traveling indefinitely, you should be outside exploring everything that the world has to offer, not sitting around in a robe watching TV back in your room. If you are on a holiday, then of course, take a much-needed break and relax. But long-term travel is not a holiday, it is a way of life. Choose to stay in small locally run guesthouses or homestays, or find cheap hotels on the edge of town. In many countries, these cheap accommodation are pretty clean and comfortable, and offer the basic necessities a traveler would need, such as a bed, running water and a door. Really, what more do you need? To help keep your costs down as well, try couchsurfing. Just remember though, couchsurfing isn't just about free accommodation. Tip number 4: shop at the markets. Local markets are great, and usually very cheap. If you are looking at buying anything from fresh fruit to souvenirs or new clothes, the markets are the place to go. The stalls usually have far lower overheads than stores do, and as a result their products are cheaper. If your accommodation has a kitchen, or you travel with a portable stove, you can buy all your meat and vegetables from the markets to cook yourself. 2 great travel budget tips in one. Tip number 3: don't buy things you don't need. This should be obvious, but you'll be surprised how hard it is to not buy that funky trinket or custom-made shoes as you travel along. If you are only on a short holiday, then go for it. But if you are planning on being on a long-term adventure, seriously consider holding off on any impromptu purchases. If it is something you have always wanted, then that is a different story. But if we had bought every single wood carving and painting we had liked, we would be broke. Plus we would need a truck to carry all the extra gear. For souvenirs, we collect small denominations of money from every country we travel to. Takes up far less room and sometimes only costs 5 or 10 cents. Tip number 2: set a daily travel budget. Set a daily budget based on what you expect to spend each day or by how long you plan to stay on the road for, and be sure to consider your expectations for the trip. Planning to stay in chic hotels and mopping up every bucket list item that comes your way will obviously require a little more spending than, say, staying in a hostel dormitory and splurging on the occasional must-do activity. Set your travel budget for the type of trip you want to have. Sometimes you'll go over, sometimes you'll be way under, but with a little discipline your daily spend will even itself out. Tip number 1: don't give up. Trying to stick to a travel budget is hard work, but don't lose sight of your goal. After a few months on the road staying in basic accommodation, it can be very tempting to go out and splurge on a fancy hotel room and a 5-course meal. To be honest, sometimes you deserve it. Just don't make it a regular occurrence. The longer we have been on the road, the more we appreciate how far we can stretch our money. Remember, you will never remember that great night's sleep you had in a $200 a night hotel, but you sure will remember only forking out $10 on a room so you can spend $190 on a once-in-a-lifetime activity. Long-term travel is hard, and so is sticking to a budget. The rewards, however, are always worth it. There you go, TopFam. Those are top 10 tips for sticking to your travel budget. Don't forget to subscribe.